المؤمنين ليزدادوا إيمانا مع إيمانهم ولله جنود السماوات والأرض وكان الله عليما حكيما ليدخل المؤمنين والمؤمنات جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها ويكفر عنهم سيئاتهم وكان ذلك عند الله فوزا عظيما ويعذب المنافقين والمنافقات والمشركين والمشركات الظانين بالله ظن السوء عليهم دائرة السوء وغضب الله عليهم ولعنهم وأعد لهم جهنم وساءت مصيرا ولله جنود السماوات والأرض وكان الله عزيزا حكيما إنا أرسلناك شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا لتؤمنوا بالله ورسوله وتعزروه وتوقروه وتسبحوه بكرة وأصيلا هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا سيماهم في وجوههم من أثر السجود ذلك مثلهم في التوراة ومثلهم في الإنجيل كزرع أخرج شطأه فآزره فاستغلظ فاستوى على سوقه يعجب الزراع ليغيظ بهم الكفار وعد الله الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات منهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما صدق الله العلي العظيم صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Granted you with powerful help. It is He who sent down the peace and the calmness in the hearts of the believers, that they may add faith to their faith. And to Allah belong the forces of the heavens and the earth, and Allah is always all-knowing, all-wise. That He may admit the men and women who believe in the gardens beneath which rivers flow to live in there forever, and He may remove them from them. And that it is gods, men and women, who keep an evil opinion of Allah on them is a round of evil, and the anger of Allah is on them, and He has cursed them and made hell ready for them, and most evil is it for a place to reach. And to Allah belong the forces of heavens and earth, and all is almighty, all-wise. Verily we have truly sent to you as a witness, as one who brings good news and as one who warns, in order that you, O people, may believe in Allah and His Messenger, and that you may help and honor Him and celebrate His praise morning and evening. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So before we start, if you've noticed, there's little pieces of paper on the table all around. What they are little surveys with suggested topics that inshallah we're going to be using to put together a Friday night program that we'll be starting in the future inshallah. So please circle your top five topics that you're interested in, and if you have any other that aren't listed, please list them anywhere on the paper. And also, so we have a director from the UK. He doesn't plan on filming. He's just here to attend, but if a camera pops up, just don't be afraid. And if you don't want to be recorded, then you can come see me and we can make sure that you don't get on camera. But that's just a precaution. Now, without further ado, it's my honor to introduce our speaker of the night. So please help me welcome him with a loud salawat. Maulana, or Samahat al-Sheikh, Dr. Ibrahim Kazroni. Ba'd salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Bari al-Khalaiq ajma'een. Wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina wa Habib qulubina Abil Qasim al-Mustafa Muhammad wa ala ahli baytihi al-Tahirin wa sahbihi al-Muntajabeen. Thank you. Well, you normally respond much louder than this. So, is it late at night, or is it Friday night, or is it me? الثانية بأعلى أصواتكم. They say every two would lead to a three, so the third one louder, please. Well, I'm grateful for the sisters and brothers here tonight. Tonight we are going to have a different approach to the presentation of a topic which is very clear and close to our heart. Those of you who have been following the events lately, Islamophobia has become a fab. Everyone talks about it. And so we have put together, after searching, I came up with CARE's PowerPoint presentation, which they have already done so on Islamophobia. So we're going to go through a few of the slides, and then we stop and we ask the brothers and the sisters to divide themselves into various groups and answer two questions. Number one, what kind of phobia you have received from the community or you have seen? Insult, whatever it is, you list them. And number two, after seeing the beginning of the PowerPoint presentation, how would you respond to it? We would like to collect these responses or answers at the end, and then we see how we can improve the PowerPoint presentation for the next session, inshallah. However, before we start with the PowerPoint presentation, a couple of things on. There is not a day that I receive an email or a message or a telephone call from around the nation clearly stating that our community is going through a difficult time, to the point that even Sikhs are being attacked because they look like Muslims. So this notion after 9/11 that we thought our interfaith work, community work, and everything else has had some or have had some kind of result, I think, unfortunately, we still have a long way to go. Pope Francis, in I believe a comment made yesterday, with regard to the Christian Jews and Muslims worshipping the same God. Although he made the statement, 2 days before him, a professor from one of the universities here in the United States was dismissed from the class and from the faculty for simply claiming the same thing, that Christians and Muslims worship the same God. And this is an academic establishment, beginning of the 21st century, in so-called most cosmopolitan society in the world, United States, would dismiss a professor or assistant professor for simply claiming that Muslims and Christians are worshipping this God. So we really have a challenge in front of us. Uphill challenge in front of us. The sooner we will be able to stand where we are and to deal with it, the better it is. So without ado, if I could ask the brothers to start with the first slide. Technical difficulty. As Murphy's Law, they say, it's the least expected time. I can walk this. I can go around. Okay.
Sit down and move off to the side or in the middle, or however you
All right. So I'll stay in the middle. Or if you leave it here, I can just, okay. Understanding and confronting Islamophobia. This was done defining Islamophobia first. These are the definitions given. Islamophobia is a closed-minded prejudice against or hatred of Islam and Muslims. By the way, we will see as we go through the slide, there are a number of institutions that they are receiving huge amount of fund. There is no clear amount given, but it's a range. Goes into millions of dollars, if not tens or even not more. Millions of dollars simply focus on presenting and projecting Islam in a negative sense. So Islamophobia is a close prejudice or hatred of Islam and Muslims. Islamophobic acts are directed at Islam or Muslims in general. When we have a number of 3 or 4 passengers from an airline, the captain telling them that because you look different, you shouldn't board the plane, it's an Islamophobic act. There is a lawsuit, I believe, against American Airlines at the moment, specifically about this issue. 3 Muslims and 1 Sikh. They are joining together and starting a class action, Islamophobic act. Anti-Muslim discrimination is directed at a specific individual, institution, or group of individuals, mosques, religious centers, etc. These are now becoming prevalent. The mosques are being attacked, religious institutions are being attacked, and even homes of religious scholars within Islam within Muslim community are being attacked. An Islamophobe is an individual who holds a close-minded view of Islam and promotes prejudice against or hate of Muslims. And you will see, as the slide goes on, you see a number of institutions that are working together specifically for this purpose. Understanding close-mindedness. There are 2, is it the next one? Or? Yeah. 2 approaches, close-mindedness, close-minded view and open-minded view. I hope that as you try to define your response to Islamophobic and Islamophobia in the community, you understand some of these open-minded views literally define the parameters that we need to locate ourselves within it. I just came out of University of Detroit, Dearborn, University of Michigan, Dearborn, and the discussion was specifically on this issue. How do we, as Muslims, within this community, approach Islam, present Islam, etc., to the rest of the community? Islam is seen as a monolithic, static, and authoritarian. The notion that 1.6, 1.7 billion people spread right across the globe from United States to China. They have different cultural background, different understanding of Islam. They present Islam differently. It doesn't exist. There is a reductionist principle. Islam is reduced to the interpretation of the few that exist, and normally the negative, the ISIS, the Daesh, and so on. Islam is seen as totally other. Still, they think that it's coming from Mars. The notion that Muslims have been born in this community and live in this community, it's not something that gets in. Somebody said that Islamophobia is some kind of mindset that goes back to the dinosaur age. So it's just, Islam is seen as an inferior, backward, and primitive compared with the so-called West. And those of you who work in academia, you see this repeatedly being mentioned, particularly universities. The narrative that people use outside the universities. 4 years ago, I was invited here at Dar al-Hikmah, and I reminded the scholars, please focus on the universities, because I teach there, I understand the mindset. The narrative that these Islamophobic institutions use, clearly defined and constructed within academic establishment. Muslims are seen as manipulative, devious, and self-righteous in their religious belief. Double standards are applied in description and criticism of Islam and the so-called West. Normally, the classic approach in Christianity that existed in the past, where the sages of the Christians were compared with the sinners of the Muslims, the same thing applies today. The sage with the sage and sinners with the sinners are not there. It's the double standard. Anti-Muslim comments, stereotypes, and discourses are seen as natural and common sense and encouraged. And we had to fight at the University of Denver when I was there to stop this kind of behavior and some kind of derogatory, condescending comment to various Muslims. In return, open-minded view, Islam is seen as diverse and dynamic with substantial internal debate. Even us here, we still, in a small community, we are trying to debate the parameters of how Islam should be explained and defined and practiced in this country. Islam is seen as both similar and interdependent, sharing a common humanity and a common space. Islam is seen as different but equal. Muslims are seen as sincere and genuine. Criticism of Islam and the so-called West are even-handed. Anti-Muslim comments, stereotypes, and discourse are seen as problematic, to be challenged and avoided as much as possible. Where we are? Well, Bayan Quran Day. Occasionally you see people coming outside with some kind of flyers. Even the gun club come to the Islamic Center and try to show off their power. The rednecks come from the south to the north to show that they are, how macho they are and how powerful they are. How do we deal with them? God bless America, as if we are not patriotic. It's only them. And so on. No Sharia or no Islamic law here, whatever it is. I mean, it varies. Is America Islamophobic? What's the answer? Yes. What about here? Well, how do we respond? So the answer is no. The way they have posed the question, they are drawing our attention to even the way we construct the question and we deal with it. Is America Islamophobic? Certainly not. No. The revulsion expressed by most Americans in August and early September 2010 over a proposed Quran burning in Florida is evidence of that fact. Minority people always there. Remember, this country, the right-wing extremists work on the 30% that they always have as a secure base. So you cannot change their point of view. Sister Zainab.
I just think that that's problematic because you're automatically studying Americans and Muslims as separate, as opposing each other.
I think they are trying to play the devil's advocate to draw our attention to the fact that we cannot generalize.
Right, but then the language here is Americans, as if Muslims are not.
Sure, but I'm just trying to use theirs. We can make a comment and then send it back to CARE and see if they can change it. And if that question is not the correct way of posing it, so what's the way it should be posed? Is there an Islamophobic element in America? Certainly. When you can see few of the pictures here. Yes. 2008, anti-Muslim discrimination was leveling off. And then what event did take place in 2008 that the whole thing changed? The election. Who was elected? Obama. Yes, the name of Hussein somewhere involved in here, or his father used to be a Kenyan Muslim, and the whole thing started. Observing in late 2009, CARE reported, observing a second year's decline in reported hate crime, reaffirmed its cautious optimism that America may be witnessing a leveling off of the post-9/11 backlash against Americans of the Islamic faith. Data collected 2000 supported the conclusion until after the 2009 inauguration, the nation tone became angry. And I remember those days in Colorado, we had literally a fight on our hand. I remember a class on Islam 121 at the University of Denver. Not a single American student signed for it. A class for American foreign policy that I was teaching, not a single student signed for it. This became a norm. During 2009 healthcare reform debate, Ross Carnum, its Democrat, found a coffin on his front lawn. Other members of Congress received death threats. The Leadership Conference on Civil Rights Education Fund reported that the combination of the vilification of immigrants combined with the economic downturn and election of Barack Obama has contributed to a surge of white supremacist activities. And goes on. There is a report here that should attract your attention. Share of media coverage of Islam reported as negative. In 2009, Islam is not only the religion that is most frequently mentioned in TV in the United States, but also a significant share of the coverage is negative. And still continues up to today. The tone of the media coverage of Islam was negative 40% of the time, while a statement about Christianity was negative only 20%. Media Turner found that 2/3 of the television coverage about Islam associate Muslim with extremism. And unfortunately, another element here, the more war in Iraq and war in other places began to go wrong, and it was quite clear that the United States has made another, as the British would say, cock up in the Middle East, the more they took revenge on Muslims and the image of Islam in the West. No room for leveling off. In late December, a Nigerian man tried and thankfully failed to blow up an aeroplane heading towards the United States. In May 2010, another man failed in his murder plan. In August and early September 2000, the dispute over Park 51 and the Florida pastor's plan to burn copies of the Quran kept Islam and Muslim front and center in the public consciousness. And the guy actually traveled around, and I believe at that time came to Michigan as well. A base for prejudice. Rating of Islam sank from 40% in November 2001 to 30% 2010. The Public Research Institute found that 45% of Americans agreed that Islam is at odds with the American values. The notion that wherever you go in front of mosques, they hold American flag is a clear indication that we are the patriot and you are not. 2010 survey by Lifeway Research found that 4 in 10 US Protestant pastors agree that Islam is dangerous and promotes violence, while they have in most cases that I have traveled around Colorado and spoke to pastors and religious communities, most of the pastors have no clue about Islam, beyond some basic ideas. So I actually organized classes in Colorado, bringing in the pastors to give them some basic ideas about Islam. And when you inform them, their views change. But ignorance is the foundation of it. Listen to this, or read it. 2 key outcomes. Anti-Muslim, for 2009, the FBI report that 18.9% of the victims of hate crimes in the United States were victimized because of a bias against a religious belief. In all, 8.4% were victims because of an anti-Islamic bias. A law enforcement professional best summed up the general community feeling regarding discrimination when the professional told CARE interviewers, now compare the hype that was created after 9/11. He said, on 9/11, I responded to ground zero with some of my colleagues, and as we were being driven to the site, we saw many people lined up on both sides of the road with signs cheering and thanking us. On one of the train trips home, we were accompanied by several senators and congressmen, and some of them signed my helmet. Now, in 2010. And I dare not go anywhere near ground zero with the fear of being attacked because I'm a Muslim. That says a lot. And instead of the community moving in the right direction, it's going backwards, and it's getting worse. The worst, now these are the institutions that receive funds, various funds, and huge amount of funds. And some of them we know who supports them, others we don't know. So here, you know the first one, and stop the Islamization of America. I mean, they use the most vile language and provocative language to play with people's emotion. Robert Spencer and Jihad Watch. Bridget Gabriel and Act for America. You see, they all patriotic titles and concepts. Frank Gaffney and the Center for Security Policy. So Muslims become a risk to American security. Stephen Emerson, an investigative project on terrorism. Now Islam is associated security risk with terrorism, etc., etc. Let me see, I think. Well, we have old Congressperson. The 4 members of Congress who called for an investigation of Muslim Capitol Hill interns, even Muslim youngsters that they go into Capitol Hill. They have to be investigated. Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, and other violent extremists presented as the image of Islam. I'm glad to notice that Daniel Pipe, the most vile anti-Islamophobic, that focused primarily on academic establishment and universities. Now it's less and less active, but the responsibility has been given to other people, a number of professors within various universities. And the case, I believe, within Miami University in Florida, the Palestinian professor that was jailed and some of them that were dismissed from their job, primarily it was started. There is a book that they have published. I believe it's called the 10 most dangerous professors the 100 most dangerous professors in the United States. And if you go and list them, Noam Chomsky is one of them. But most of these come from the Muslim background or Palestinians. The best, well, we have a number of individuals that are supporting or standing up to Islamophobic tendencies. New York Mayor, Congressional Tri-Caucus, Representative Keith Ellison, Jon Stewart, and a number of others. If you want on a light-hearted way, to listen how Jon Stewart actually rips through the Islamophobic narratives, watch some of his shows. So it's useful. And then a few others. Another one that is worth watching is Stephen Colbert. Media Matters, Interfaith Leaders, and few others. These are the best of the 2009-2010. Where we want to go is the classic question. During the past 4 weeks, in the 15 minutes time that I gave a lecture before Friday prayer, I specifically focused on this notion of exactly having a clear goal where we want to go from here, but in a political plane. I said that there are 3 major issues that we need to address. Every minority in a majority state or a majority environment needs to understand these. Number 1, identity. Who are we? Whether we are American, Lebanese, Muslim, whatever, Christian, whatever however that identity is defined. Number 2 is the political participation. We have a civil society. Nothing, sisters and brothers, nothing can be done if we stay away from what we call the civil society. There is an expression that says, if you are not sitting at the table, you are part of the menu. If we are not there to define the narrative and the agenda, somebody else would define it for us, then don't complain. Accept it. But if you want to at least be part of the construction of the agenda, you have to, all of us, we have to take responsibility seriously and move into civil society. Lock, stock, and barrel. Particularly is critical for the youth, both brothers and sisters. The elders, whether they participate, they don't participate, it's neither here nor there, because they have their own mindset. But it's your future. And I can't emphasize it enough. The elders can pack up and go home. Where are you going to go? Into a hostile environment that you know nothing about it? This is it. So you have to understand your responsibility. Where do we want to go from here? And finally, having a clear understanding of our norms and values. That the third topics. During Sunday program, I have briefly addressed some of these issues. But we need to have, but political participation is clear. Now we are confronted with this Islamophobia. Unfortunately, one of the problems that we are reactive as a community. We are not proactive. We don't see, we don't look ahead 10 years, 15 years from now. We wait until crises develop and then scramble for, okay, what to do, and try to put something together just to cross over this hurdle, and then we get back to normal. And you can see the same thing, with my due respect to everybody else, with our religious program, with our other programs that we have. There is no clear plan. If somebody walks from Mars, let's be frank, and walks into any Islamic center and says, okay, brothers and sisters, you have been operating this center for past X, Z years. Where do you want to be in 10 years from now? What answers do we have? Let's be frank. If somebody asks us, in 10 years from now, where do you want to be? For our personal life, we all have a plan. I want to be a doctor, I want to be a surgeon, I want to be an engineer, I want to be X, I want to be Z. But for the center that ultimately links to our own identity here and plans on how to respond to the crisis, we really have no plan. Now, this PowerPoint asks us a serious question. Where we want to be, or where we want to go from here. We can either, and as I traveled around in the past, I keep hearing this. We all complain why the Muslim community doesn't have the power of the Jewish community. Political, whatever. They want that power, but we are not prepared to work for it. We are not prepared to understand that where they are now, it's the result of a long-term struggle and working hard. Remember, I have said this, in 1945, around the end of the war, just before 43, around the end of the war, boats filled with Jewish immigrants coming from Europe were turned away by United States. United States government refused to accept the same kind of policies that we see being implemented vis-a-vis the Muslims or the Syrians, refused to accept 20,000 Jewish immigrants that were suffering in Europe to come to United States. That's 1945. Now, 2015 or 16. How many years? 45, that's 55, 70. If my maths still work. 70, we now have got to the stage that we don't need to use calculators to add them up. So within 70 years, they have managed. The now Harvard professors are writing books about how the Jewish community, AIPAC and others, literally dictating and controlling the American foreign policy and everything else. We want that power. but we are not prepared to work for it. We think by sitting at home and doing nothing, oh, Mr. X or Sheikh Fulan or Mulana Fulan said don't vote. It's tantamount to suicide if we don't vote and we don't participate in civil society. People who give you these opinions, tomorrow they pack up and go somewhere else. So this is a place where we have to stop. Have a conversation. I want you to clearly come up with some policy statements. Where do we want to go from here? Islamophobia is part of what we call general broad xenophobia that exists, that we are now the latest subject of it. Go look at the history of the United States and see it was directed either against nationals, the Italians, the Germans, the Irish, and so on, or against a particular faith, the Jews, even the Catholics, and so on. So we are now the latest subject that's being attacked. How do we organize? Where do we want to go? What do we want? This is something that we really need to have a clear understanding, because how do we respond to Islamophobia will come out of our response to where do we want to go. So let's get into groups. Find an answer, and then also address how do we respond to Islamophobia. We want ideas. You have, sisters, 10 minutes? 10 minutes. Oops. 10 minutes, get yourself into a working group, and then the papers should be around. I think people should have pieces of paper that they can work on. And then we can reconvene again.
It's right here.
Thank you. Which question do you want to answer first?
Two questions.
I know which one first.
Where we want to go, and then how do we respond to Islamophobia?
Okay.
Whatever subject.
Okay. For where do we want to go from here? We said to reach out as a community, as a united community, to expand our initiatives, reach out to others like our fellow neighbors, and to be examples of Islam, to be a community, because we sometimes act as a competition, and that really hinders our progress as a whole. And then for Islamophobia, how to deal with it. How do we deal with Islamophobia? We said to show, like, don't just say what is Islam, what we're about, but we have to show people, like, we have to talk the talk, not just walk the walk. Like, if we want to talk, for example, about, like, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, we should act like him as well. We should also ignore certain magnitudes of hate, but we should also know our rights and know the law and use it to our advantage to protect us.
Could we have a copy of these two papers so we can collect them? Brothers from here. Again, two questions. Where do we want to go? And then how do we respond to Islamophobia?
Okay, for what we came up with was basically where we want to go in the future is we're basically leaning toward, we want to try to educate ourselves as Muslims, educate ourselves in this country, you know, and lead by set a good example. You know, don't be afraid of your faith, use education. That way, if you educate and you strive for success, you know, you're going to achieve those great things like other people have done over the last 60, 70 years that we were just talking about. You know, we could get in foreign policy, professors, all kind of workforce, get high up there. You know, you can't be complacent and lazy. You know, don't make excuses. If your parents are successful, you can't just lean on them. You have to strive to be better. Future generations have to strive to be better and greater as a whole. You know, and unite and not divide each other, basically.
And how do we respond to Islamophobia?
To Islamophobia, basically, we just have
Do you
to...
write anything on it?
Briefly, we wrote a few notes. We're talking about just as... we just have to lead by, we have to set the right examples, you know. I mean, just because other people are out there in the minority talking negatively toward Islam as a whole, we have to lead, be out there as Muslims, and people are going to see when they interact with you, oh, you know, you might have a great relationship in a workplace, or a friend, could be Catholic, Jewish, what have you, Buddhist, and they will respond to you positively. They know you, you know, as a good Muslim. You know, not hide your faith.
Could we have the paper, please?
Yeah.
Sisters in the back. Oh, so has sisters. Oh, it's okay. Go ahead.
Goodness. Okay. Well, okay. So where we want to go, it's very vague, but we want to be one united community that rises up together. And by united, I mean drop the Sunni Shia divisions, because and we need to de-ghettoize Dearborn. Because I think we're so insular that we don't see, and I live in East Dearborn. I mean, sorry, no offense to anybody, and I teach there and everything, but we're such an insular community that we don't have, and I don't think we have a good idea of the problems that other Muslims are facing in this country, and I don't think we have a good idea of the image problem Islam is facing. Wait, what was the second question?
How do we respond?
So there are short-term and long-term. We should have a short-term plan and a long-term plan. The short-term plan should feed the long-term plan. I think long-term is easier to answer. I think we need to educate ourselves, not just in Islam, because you know, you mentioned the Jewish community, Sheikhna. The problem with the Jewish community comparison is they are a very secularized community, and we refuse to secularize. So you know, we want to achieve what they've achieved, but we want to maintain Din al-Haq first and foremost. So we need to educate ourselves in Islam, but we also need to kind of focus on educating the young people in our community. The majority of people in our community are not religious, and they're not educated. And, you know, and they make money, and that's good, but we need to stop looking for that type of gain.
Could you write these so we can...
Sure, we'll write them down.
If one of the
Hello? Okay. For the first question, where do we want to go? We agree with the sisters over there that we need to be more unified. I feel like we agreed that we feel like this community, we're in competition with one another instead of trying to help push each other up. So we need to start supporting one another more, and we can end up on Capitol Hill and eventually start influencing foreign policy and the outlook that Muslims have that they're perceived through the media. We also agree with the sisters over there that we need to educate and we need to start on an individual level. A lot of the youths, like the sister was saying, lack knowledge of Islam, and I think a lot of people lack the basic fundamentals of Islam. So we need to start on a micro scale and work ourselves up to a bigger scale. Inshallah. Yeah.
We agree as well with other sisters, but in terms of uniting as a community, we're thinking of also uniting with other faiths. And so doing more dialogue with our fellow Christian brothers and sisters. No. Where do we want to go? Yeah. Just to educate each other. I think we've been doing that. We've had a few events, and we can tell that the Christians are really encouraged and motivated to reach out to us. So we need to do a lot more of that and feel comfortable to enter their facilities, not just invite them to ours. And then how do we deal with Islamophobia? We are saying that maybe we need to educate ourselves on how the Prophet and Ahl al-Bayt dealt with it, because it was obviously very prevalent in their times. So them being the perfect role models, we need to look back as to how they dealt with it.
Assalamu alaikum. The stuff we came up with is stronger leaders in all the fields that this is the steps we need to take to fix both where we want to go and the Islamophobia. That connect, like leaders that connect to Islam and what they do in all the careers. And knowledge about who we are so we could connect on our everyday lives in our careers. And the last one is fix the politics with us. Like everyone agreed in here, is we can't have problems if we're trying to fix when we're trying to unite together. Yeah, that's it.
To go, where do we want to go? Sorry. To become one ummah again, like everybody keeps saying, not to be separated by, like she says, Shiite and Sunni, the different sects, and even economic classes, things like that, to know what Islam is and live it. My daughter had an idea as far as educating the public, not just ourselves, but the public as well. Like in the, I guess, 80s and 90s, there were the do not smoke ads, or say no to drugs. We could put out, the Muslim community could put out commercials in the TV, internet, and newspapers to educate the public.
If I laugh.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum. I just want to mention something. So I want to be very realistic, and we want to look for something that's more short-term, not always long-term. Unifying the ummah is a very hard thing to do. Let's be very realistic about this. So as a Muslim American, I work in Detroit. I've been working for 3.5 years in downtown Detroit. I'm the first muhajjabi to be in a company that's over 100 years. It wasn't easy to go in. Everybody was like always staring at me all the time. They want to know how I act. I think Muslims in general have to just leave their community a little bit, go work a little bit farther away from Dearborn Heights. It's good. It's not as it's like a flag of, oh, I'm a Muslim, so everybody comes and asks me. So I took advantage of, and I would tell them. So I think, yeah, we have to leave our communities a little bit. Stay without one, it's better.
No, it's okay.
Okay, so we were thinking we just want to be an integral part of the society and be recognized and respected as equal human beings because we're seen as like the aliens. So where we want to go is like we want to be equal humans with everybody because we're viewed as non-human. And then for short-term reactions, if somebody like says a remark to you, maybe just smile or like walk away. Act like our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in Ahlul Bayt. And just lead by example, like show them real Islam. Don't let the media explain who we are.
Okay. For where we want to go, we said it's ultimately about educating others and showing, like, through our actions and how we act, like, what Islam is really about. We need to portray and inform others that our religion represents peace. Like, for, like, the 9/11 attacks and all that, they think that we're terrorists and stuff, and we're seen as violent and stuff. And then we need to inform them and show them that we're not violent. And we need to have open communication events between Muslims and non-Muslims. Like that unity dinner we had the other day, that was good. Okay. We need to reach out to other communities and educate through actions. Okay, that's it.
Anybody else left? Okay. Would you please pass the microphone?
Assalamu alaikum. I just have a quick comment. Going with what you were saying a second ago, I think when we're talking to non-Muslims and whatnot, we should at least try to not be apologetic Muslims, and that's a problem that I've been noticing.